topic for today's discussion is extinguishment of obligations. So sit back, relax, and enjoy that discussion. All right. Now, how do you extinguish an obligation? First is by payment or performance. Under Article 1232, payment means not only the delivery of money, but also the performance in any other manner of an obligation. Pag sinabing bayad ka na, tapos na ang iyong obligasyon or tapos na ang iyong kontrata. Now, as discussed, payment means not only the delivery of money, but also the performance. It is also the fulfillment of the prestation due that extinguishes the obligation by the realization of the purposes for which it was constituted. Sometimes it is a juridical act which is voluntary, licit, and made with the intent to extinguish an obligation. So payment can be made juridically by order of the court or extrajudicially when kayo-kayo lang ang nagbayad. Next. Requisites. Siyempre, the person who pays, yung magbabayad. Number 2, the person to whom payment is made, yung tumanggap ng bayad. The thing to be paid, it is usually the prestation or the condition or the contract. Usually in the contract loan, magkano yung utang mo. And number 4, the manner, time, and place of payment. Saan ba? Paano ba yung pagbabayad? 1 give, 2 gives, 3 gives, installments. Okay? So, yun yung payment. The paying as well as the one receiving should have the requisite capacity. Ibig sabihin, pag minor de edad, medyo alanganin ang nagbayad o tumanggap ng bayad. Kasi maybe baka hindi i-honor ng kausap mo or ng kontrata mismo. Next. A debt shall not be understood to have been paid unless the thing or service in which the obligation consists has been completely delivered or rendered as the case may be. Ito yung pag may utang, may resibo. In the contract of loan, kailangan may pirmahan. Kumbaga, nagbayad ka, ibibigay sa'yo yung resibo, acknowledgement receipt, such as acknowledgement receipt. Or, pag may utang ka, at ang usapan ay ibabalik yung cheque na pinahiram mo as a condition, as a security. Pag nagbayad ka ng utang mo, syempre, ang katunayan na nagbayad ka ng utang ay isusurrender ng creditor yung cheque sa payor, sa debtor. Okay? Next. 2 requisites of payment. Syempre, identity of prestation. The very thing or service due must be delivered or released. Integrity. Prestation must be fulfilled completely. Now, in our example, in a contract loan, usually, the identity is the money. The very thing or service must be due, delivered, or released. So, kung services naman, like the construction of a house, kailangan identified siya. Now, integrity, it must be fulfilled completely. Kung contract of loan, kung pera yung usapan, kailangan buo. Otherwise, it's not complete. Kung construction naman ng bahay ang usapan, kailangan kumpleto yung bahay. Base sa napag-usapang kontrata ng nagpagawa at yung gumagawa. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. If the obligation has been substantially performed in good faith, the obligor may recover as though there had been a strict and complete fulfillment, less damages suffered by the obligee. When the obligee accepts the performance, knowing its incompleteness or irregularity, and without any expressing any protest or objection, the obligation is deemed fully complied with. Okay? So, Minsan, may mga kontrata na kahit hindi kompleto ang binayad, let's say 1.3 million ang binayad dahil magkaibigan kayo, 1 million na lang at yung creditor, sige na nga, hindi ko na sisingilin ang additional 300,000. Kasi 1 million naman lang talaga ang utang mo sa akin. Or like yung nagpagawa ng bahay, hindi natapos yung kusina kasi kailangan talagang tumira yung bahay na yon, tirahan yung bahay na yon, tinanggap na lang ng nagpapagawa. Kasi nga, um, emergency yung paglipat sa bahay na yun. So there is substantial performance in good faith of the prestation. Okay? It's clear. Next. Article 140. Payment shall be made to the person in whose favor the obligation has been constituted or his successor in interest or any person authorized to receive it. Ibig sabihin, yung pagbabayad, doon talaga siya nagpautang sa'yo. Or, anak niya, or in case of isang korporasyon, kung namatay na ang nagpapautang, yung estate niya or yung mga anak niya, or by virtue of a contract, any person authorized to receive it. Now, the authority of a person to receive payment for the creditor may be legal as confirmed by law or the court, and conventional when the authority has been given by the creditor itself. So, kailangan pag sa ibang tao ang pagbabayad, kailangan authorize yung taong yon in a legal way or in a conventional way. Clear? So, Article 1245, dación en pago or dación in payment. This means that whereby property is alienated to the creditor in satisfaction of a debt in money shall be governed by the law of sale. So, ano ito? Ano yung dación in pago or dación in payment? This is the delivery and transmission of ownership of a thing by the debtor to the creditor as an accepted equivalent of the performance of the obligation. Now, the property given may consist only of a thing, but also of a real right. So, this is considered as novation by change of the object or the prestation. Now, when the debt is money, the law on sale shall govern. In this case, the act is deemed to be a sale with the amount of the obligation to the extent that is extinguished being considered as price. So, halimbawa, si A may umutang kay B ng 1.3 million pesos and it should be paid for a period of 1 year. Ngayon, dahil hindi siya makabayad ng 1.3 million in 1 year, ay nung mag-expire yung usapan nila, let's say from December 2021 to December 2022, tama ba? December 21, 21, o tama, 2022, ay binigay ngayon yung brand new car na dumating na nalunan ni A sa isang raffle. So, is it commensurate? 1.3 million? It is. So, once tanggapin yon ni B ng creditor, there is already dación en pago or dación en payment. Next. The payment of debts in money should be made in the currency stipulated. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, legal tender. Ngayon guys, ano yung legal tender na sinasabi? Siyempre, Philippine peso, the US dollar, or yung bago ngayon, Bitcoin. So ano ba talaga ang usapan? Usually, kung the usual is pesos. Kung dito sa Pilipinas, kung ang usapan ay contract of loan, it's in a million pesos. But right now, may mga kontrata na sakop na mismo ng Bitcoin or ng US dollar. So, if it's not stipulated, the legal currency is used. But if it is stipulated as other than the legal currency, it is also allowed. Okay? So, application of payments. Ano to? Ito yung he who has various debts of the same kind in favor of one of the same creditor may declare at the time of making the payment to each of them the same must be applied. So, ito yung case ng madaming utang. Kasi nga, nagpapaaral ng anak. So, every month, umuutang siya sa papautang or sa loan shark. So, may tatlo siyang utang. Nakabayad pa lang siya after 5 months. So, ang sabi niya, i-apply muna yung payment doon sa pinaka-last. Kasi, may interest yun. So, i-apply muna yung pinaka-last, hindi, yung pinaka-unang payment or in what debt he chooses. Okay? Ganyan lang naman ang application of payment. Okay? No, so requisites nito, one debtor and one creditor, two or more debts of the same kind. Usually, pera usapan. And all debts must be due. So, in cases where nagkautang ka sa loan shark, kailangan bayaran mo kung wala ka pang bayad sa lahat. Let's say, may utang ka ng A for January 1, 2020, 50,000. B, January 6 at March, another 50,000. And C, June, another 50,000. Ngayon, ang pera mo, and this is all due by June. Okay? So, by June, lahat yan mag-incur ng interest. Ngayon, by June, ang mag-incur muna ng interest is 50,000. It's A. B will incur interest by October, and C will incur interest by December. So, if you want, you need to apply the payment. Kasi ang pera mo lang is June is for 50,000. Hindi pa siya due, ha? In this problem, you should choose to apply for the first utang. So, ito, due. So, 6 months, June. Now, second example, ito ngayon na 50,000 ay all due by June. So, ito ngayon, in the first situation, ang utang niya na due lang is by June, 50,000. Now, in the second situation, itong lahat ay due by June. So, pipiliin mo, ano ba yung pwede kong bayaran? Siyempre, same pa din. You choose A because A now will incur the greater interest. Okay? So, papayaran mo pa rin is A. Okay? So, yun lang naman ang application of payment. So, it is necessary that the obligation must be all due except there's stipulation, and the application of payment is made by the party for whose benefit the term of period has been constituted. Okay? So, chill. Okay, we continue. Alright. Now, payment by session. Under Article 1255, the debtor may cede or assign his property to his creditors in payment of his debts. Okay? This session, unless there is stipulation to the contrary, shall only release the debtor from responsibility for the net proceeds of the thing assigned. The agreements which, on the effect of the session, are made between the debtor and his creditors shall be governed by special laws. Okay, simplihan lang natin, guys. Session, as defined by law and by jurisprudence, is a special form of payment whereby the debtor abandons or assigns all of his property. Take note, all of his property for the benefit of his creditors, so that the latter may obtain payment of their credits from the proceeds of the property. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng ari-arian para makabayad sa mga utang ay ina-assign or ina-abandon in favor of his creditors. Okay, maliwanag yan ha. Pag ikaw umutang at hindi ka nakabayad, at ang natitira na lamang ay mga properties mo, i-assign mo yan sa iyong mga inutangan. Okay. So, the requisites nito is the plurality of debts, partial or relative insolvency of the debtor, and acceptance of cession by the creditors. Okay. Guys, may mga nangyaring ganito during this pandemic. Okay? So, yung mga na-bankrupt na negosyo ay inilit ng bangko. Tulad ng, syempre, yung mga house and lot, kasi meron yan na kasunduan. Pag ikaw umutang at hindi ka nakabayad, may garantiya ka na yung bahay mo ay ang collateral. Maliwanag. Naging collateral yung bahay mo at yun yung ibibigay mo, pati yung mga ari-arian, personal properties mo, pag hindi ka nakabayad sa amount na pagkakautang mo sa bangko. Okay? Now, so, kinds of session, contractual, base sa kontrata, tulad ng mga pinipirmahan, and judicial, meaning insolvent ka or nag-file ka ng bankruptcy. And it must be initiated by the debtors. And usually, it requires 2 or more creditors, debtors, insolvent session accepted by the creditors. Okay? So, ito guys, ito lang, take note dito sa session. Such assignment does not have the effect of making the creditors the owners of the property of the debtor unless there is an agreement to that effect. Hindi po automatic na sila na yung may-ari. Kumbaga, i-appraise yan at ibebenta. Kasi pera inutang mo, ang ibabayad mo din sa kanila ay pera. Maliwanag po ba? Unless there is an agreement to that effect. And in that agreement, pirmado po yan, nasa kontrata po yan. Okay? The difference between dasyon and session. So dasyon may be one creditor and does not require insolvency. Next is the delivery of a thing, the transfer of the ownership of the property, and it is a novation. So, dito sa dasyon, pag hindi ka nakabayad, ita-transfer mo ngayon yung ownership ng property. Like yung example natin is yung kotse. So, there is technically a novation. So, payment extinguishes the obligation to the extent of the value of the thing delivered. While in session, there are many creditors, madaming inutangan, requires partial or relative insolvency, and the delivery of all the property to the creditors, and there is no transfer of ownership, only of possession and administration. The effect is merely to release the debtor from the net proceeds of the property, hence partial extinguishment of the obligation. Okay, clear? we proceed. Tender of payment and consignation. Under Article 1256, if the creditor to whom tender of payment has been made refuses without just cause to accept it, the debtor shall be released from the responsibility by the consignation of the thing or sum due. Okay. So, dalawa to ha. It's tender of payment and consignation. I will explain what is tender of payment. A tender of payment is a manifestation, usually in writing, made by the debtor to the creditor of his desire to comply with his obligation. The act of the debtor of offering to the creditor the thing or amount due. In consignation, deposit of the object or the amount due with the proper court after refusal or inability of the creditor to accept the tender of payment. Usually guys, nangyayari ito sa bentahan ng lupa. Yung pagbenta ay through installment. Now, there are times when the creditor or the seller of the land is nagbaback out. They change their minds. So, ito ngayon mga debtor or ito ngayon mga buyers na to ay para magtuloy yung bentahan ng lupa ay tinetender nila tender of payments yung utang nila or yung price ng lupa dun sa creditor. Okay? So, pag hindi tinanggap ng creditor yung pera na eto na, ibinabayad ko na, consignation na nangyayari. Dinedeposit ito sa court at nag-file ng kaso, petition for consignation, o tama, petition for consignation, tapos i-inform the creditor, oy, tanggapin mo to, at mag-execute ka ng deed of sale. That's tender of payment and consignation. Simple lang naman to eh. So, requisites, there was a debt due, DLNDN, the consignation of the obligation was made because of some legal cause. The previous notice of consignation has been given to the person. Kailangan guys ng notice of consignation. The amount or thing due was placed at the disposal of the court. Kailangan i-deposito mo yung pambayad mo mismo sa korte. And after the consignation has been made, the person interested has been notified thereof. So, kailangan notified parati yung creditors here. Okay? So, yan. And under Article 1258, consignation shall be made by depositing the things due at the disposal of judicial authority, before whom the tender of payment shall be proved in a proper case and the announcement of consignation in other cases. So, yung sinasabi ko kanina, sa korte siya linalagay at hindi ko kung kaninong tao. So, pag nagbayad ka ng pera, after tender of payment, you inform the creditor that magbabayad ka at hindi niya yung tinanggap and it's properly documented, you deposit now, you consign the amount due to the court and you inform the creditor, oh, ito yung bayad na sa korte na. Tanggapin mo na para magtapos na ang ating pagpata. Okay? So, that, my friends, is the concept of tender of payment and consignation. Next is loss of the thing due. Under Article 1262, an obligation which consists in the delivery of the determinate thing shall be extinguished if it should be lost or destroyed without the fault of the debtor and before he has incurred in delay. Second paragraph. When the law or stipulation, the obligor is liable even for fortuitous events, the loss of the thing does not extinguish the obligation and he shall be responsible for damages. The same rule applies when the nature of the obligation requires the assumption of risk. Okay, isahin natin yung paragraph na to. An obligation will consist of the delivery of a determinate thing. Ibig sabihin, hindi generic. A determinate, it's a unique thing. Like a red bag with a plate with a um, embroidered in the name of Miss Susan Reyes. So, or a car, a Grand Livina, or a Tesla, a red Tesla car with bulletproof glasses and machine guns on the side. It's a specific, it's a determinate car, a determinate thing na isa lang siya sa mundo. Now, should it be lost or destroyed before it is delivered to the owner, and it is without the fault of the debtor, and before he is incurred in delay, the loss of the thing due, lost na siya. During transport, binagyo or nasunog, inabdak ng pirata yung Tesla na pina-specialize mo kay Elon Musk, wala na talaga. Second paragraph, when by law or stipulation, kung may nakalagay sa usapan that the obligor is liable even for fortuitous event. What are the fortuitous event? Bagyo, acts of man and acts of God, pirate attacks, mechanical failures, unforeseen events during transport, or accidents, maybe. So, kahit nangyari yon, Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, is still liable to you to deliver the Tesla car, the electric Tesla car specialized version. Okay? So that's clear that loss of the thing due extinguishes the obligation. Okay? Next. So, sa 1263, if the obligation to deliver is a generic thing, the loss or destruction of anything of the same kind does not extinguish the obligation. Kung BIOS lang naman po yan, Toyota BIOS, automatic or manual, at bago makarating sa'yo, na umorder ka sa Toyota, nasira, nagkandasira-sira, nahulog sa bangin yung nag-deliver sa'yo, pwede nga po kung palitan yan kasi generic thing yung BIOS. Okay? Next. Clear yun na? Clear. Now, whenever the thing is lost under 1265, whenever the thing is lost in the possession of the debtor, it should be presumed that the loss was due to his fault. This is the presumption of loss. It's due to his fault unless there is proof to the contrary. And without prejudice to Articles 1165. Okay? So, the presumption, pag nasira, pag nawasak yung thing, like hiniram mo na kotse, it was your fault. Kahit na-aksidente ka, it was your fault and you will be liable for damages sa hiniraman mo. Okay? Clear yan. That's very simple. In Article 1266, the debtor in obligation to do shall be released when the prestation becomes legally or physically impossible without the fault of the obligor. Okay? Next. Pag sinabing legal impossibility, direct. When the law prohibits the performance of the execution of work agreed upon. Example, pumatay ka. Patayin mo si mayor or patayin mo si governor. That is immoral and dangerous. So, legal impossibility, bawal po yan. So, ibig sabihin, kahit hindi mo i-comply, it's alright. Now, indirect, the law imposes duties of a superior character upon the obligor, which are incompatible with the work agreed upon, although the latter may be perfectly licit, as where the obligor is drafted for military service or for a civil function. So, ang physical impossibility naman, death of the debtor or where there is an accident. So, clear. So 1267, when the service has become so difficult as to be manifestly beyond the contemplation of the parties, the obligor may also be released therefrom, in whole or in part. Pero depende to sa usapan between the debtor and the creditor. Okay. Under the doctrine of unforeseen event or the doctrine of relative impossibility, better known as the doctrine of rebus sic instantibus, or in Latin, things standing thus. This is a concept of international law which stipulates that where there has been a fundamental change of circumstances, a party may withdraw from or terminate the contract in question. Now guys, this this concept, simple lang to. Pag nagbago ang sitwasyon ng dalawang parties, there's a fundamental change. Like when this pandemic happened, there's a fundamental change between the parties, making them not compliant with the terms and conditions of their contract. Hindi na nila ma-comply ang terms and conditions of their contract. Both parties may withdraw or terminate the contract in question. But in this kind of doctrine, if this depends between the stipulations of both parties. Otherwise, the one who was benefited or one who was damaged by the termination of the contract can sue for damages. So the doctrine of rebus sic instantibus is also based on fairness. So a person, one of the contracting parties cannot benefit or should not benefit with the termination of the contract in question because of the fundamental change of the circumstances on both or one of the parties. Okay? So that, my friends, is the doctrine of rebus sic instantibus. Okay, now we proceed. Confusion or merger of rights. Ano ba to confusion of merger of rights? Simple lang to. It's when the obligation is extinguished from the time the characters of creditor and debtor are merged in the same person. Usually guys, pag may utang ka talaga. Ngayon, kung nagpautang ka sa iba naman, kahit may utang ka, at yung utang na yun, biglang yung inutangan mo, yung nagpautang sa'yo, let us make it a concrete example. Okay? Si A, umutang ng 10K kay B. Now, when A owes 10K kay B, so A is the debtor and B is the creditor. B is the creditor. Now, while being a debtor, A loaned 10K to C. Okay? A loaned 10K to C. So A now becomes the creditor. At si C yung debtor. Now, when the characters of a creditor and debtor are merged in the same person, the obligation is extinguished. Now, how do we do this? If C assigns to B the 10K. Okay? C gives to B. To B. To B. The 10K. Si B ngayon ang biglang naging debtor. Si B ngayon yung naging debtor. So, in the first condition, B is the creditor. And C gives to B. C, pinautang niya din si B sa halagang 10K din. Now, if C assigns the credit to A, he becomes now the creditor of B. And yung utang ni A kay B before is by operation of law merged in the same person. So that's confusion or merger of rights. Chill lang, di ba? Okay. Now, as defined, merger or confusion is the meeting in one person of the qualities of a creditor and debtor with respect to the same obligation. It erases the plurality of subjects of the obligation. So, yun. Clear lang. Based on my example, ganun yung mangyayari sa merger or confusion. Now, next. The effect of merger is to extinguish the obligation. Siyempre. Now, in our next topic, this is compensation. Compensation is a mode of extinguishing the concurrent amount, the obligations of those persons who in their own right are reciprocally debtors and creditors of each other. So, it is the offsetting of two obligations. So, nag-utang, inutangan, yung nangutang, nagpa-utang din. So, it extinguishes the concurrent amount if of different values. So, madali na, dito, ito yung importante. How do you differentiate compensation versus payment and compensation? Okay. So, in compensation, there can be partial extinguishment of the obligation. While in payment, the performance must be complete unless swayed by the creditor. So, in payment, it involves delivery of action, while compensation, usually it's legal, takes place by operation of law without simultaneous delivery. So, that's the differentiation between compensation and payment. Okay? Next. And lastly, ito yung novation. Novation under Article 1291, obligations may be modified by changing their object or principal condition or substituting the person of the debtor, and 3, subrogating a third person into the rights of a creditor. So, isa-isay natin yan. So, 1, there must be changing their object or principal condition. Like if nagbago yung object, say there's a change in the amount of the loan, there's a change in the object or the prestation, nagbago yung kotse, imbes Bios, naging Fortuner. So there's a change in the price. That's changing the object of a principal condition. So na-amend yung contract. So there is novation. The first obligation is extinguished. Number 2, substituting the person of the debtor. So kung bago na yung party sa contract, technically, meron novation, it substitutes, it extinguishes the obligation. And 3, subrogating a third person into the rights of a creditor. So same din. So sa number 2, there's a change in the debtor. Sa number 3, there's a change in the creditor. So that's it. So that is how you extinguish an obligation. So for our next topic, that's contracts. watch out, and good luck on your finals. Once again, this is Attorney Hachi, and you are on Torny Tips. Thank you and God bless.